Hello, welcome back once again. So in today's class, we are going to look at the topic um, that says industry. And for this topic, we'll be looking at the meaning of industry and also the classification of industry. And then we'll look at the description of the local craft industry and what it entails. And also we'll look at the major industrial zones we have in Nigeria and the factors, affecting the location of industries in Nigeria. So quickly, let's look at the definition of an industry. An industry is simply a place or a factory where raw materials are transformed into semi-finished or finished products. So a place where when we take raw materials to, it can be processed into something that is beneficial to us. We call that place an industry. And let's look at the classification of industries in Nigeria. So in Nigeria, we have three basic forms of industries. And the first industry we have is the primary industry. The second industry is secondary industry, and the third one is the tertiary industries. And let's look at what these three industries, what they entail. So for the primary industries, actually, they are concerned with extraction of natural resources as raw materials. Now, this is a type of industry that interacts with nature directly. So what it means is that they get their raw materials or their products directly from nature, and they are also known as the extractive industry. A good example is lumbering, where the people in this industry, they actually go to the forest, and places where they have trees, and they cut them down and take it to the secondary industry for further processing. So you can see that the raw materials they get or they produce is gotten directly from nature. And another example of the primary industry is the agricultural sector, which has to do with fishing, which has to do with farming. The fishermen, they get the fish directly from nature, and the farmers, they cultivate their land, which is nature. And we have other examples of primary industries, that mining and excavation of minerals from the earth. That's also a primary industry. Now let's go to the second category of industry, which is called the secondary industry. Now, the secondary industry, they are concerned with processing of raw materials or processing of natural resources that is extracted by the primary industry. Now, let me give a good example. Let's look at the primary industry, for instance. If we have the garri processing, industry in the secondary sector, and they need a raw material from the primary sector. Now, the thing is that for garri processing industry to function, they will need cassava, directly from the primary industry. So what they need to do is that they will patronize the farmers in the rural areas, and they will buy the cassava that the farmers, they've planted and harvested. So when they get that cassava, they take it to their industry, which is the second industry, and they transform this cassava, purchased from the primary industry, they transform it into, finished products that can be used. And finished products can be, garri, can be cassava flour, and the rest. So that is basically what happens in the secondary industry. So they are also seen as a manufacturing industry. So you can refer to the secondary industry as a manufacturing industry, just as you see the primary industry as the extractive industry. And one thing about the secondary industry is that they are capital intensive. They require lots of capital before they can function very well. And most of their processes require the use of complex machines and the use of complex processes. So as a result of that, they require more skilled laborers, to work in such a particular place. And the next thing about this secondary industry is that they are urban related. So they are mostly found in urban areas all across the country. Now let's go to the third category of industry. Now the third category of industry is called the tertiary industry. Now for this industrial category, they don't produce anything, they don't interact with nature. Their major duty or task is that they provide essential services that is needed for the smooth operation of the people in the primary industry and also in the secondary industry. Now a good example of the tertiary industry is the banking sector, the advertising sector, the insurance, trading, transportation, teaching and communication sector. So if you walk down to the bank, let's say Access Bank or UBA or whatever bank, the services being rendered there is a tertiary industrial type of service. If you go to a school where you have people teaching, now all of the activities going on there falls under the tertiary institution. And if you go to the insurance house or transport companies, the services they render also fall under the tertiary industry. So it means that the primary industry, they extract from nature, the secondary industry, they process and convert to finished products, while the tertiary industry, what they do is that they render services to people in the primary and secondary sector. So these are the three categories of industries. Now let's look at the next type of industry. Now this type of industry is called the local craft industry. Now for the local craft industry, they are engaged by craftsmen, that use local raw materials obtained from their immediate localities to produce a particular article. So what it means in essence is that this industry, the people in this industry, they actually use raw materials from their locality. Whatsoever they can get around them, they use it. And one thing about the local craft industry, which we are still going to look at, is that they make use of cheap and archaic implements for their production process. Now a good example of the local craft industry is the pottery industry, where they make the clay pots and the cups and the rest. Now for this industry, all they simply need to do is that they will need to source out for clay around their locality, wherever they can get clay for molding, they go after it, and they use their potter's wheel to carry out the entire process. Even basket making industry, even zobo making industry, all of these are they are in the local craft industry. So let's look at the features of the local craft industries in Nigeria. Now the first feature of the local craft industry in Nigeria is that there is limited space, for their production. They don't need much space, they don't need acres of land, they don't need a very large facility for production. They can simply use a room or simply use any space they find around them for their production. And the second feature of the local craft industry is that a small labor force is employed. They can actually make use of family members, or they can make use of friends. They don't need to employ as many persons for this purpose. And also articles are produced in small quantities. Whatever they produce, they don't produce in large quantities. So it's not a heavy industry, it's a light type of industry, because when they produce, most times they produce for their local market, or they produce for their family, making it smaller in quantity. And also the articles that they produce, they sell it basically in the local market. They don't go on an international scale, because the moment you try to sell your article globally, your industry will actually transform into a secondary type of industry. So that's why you see most times they sell in what? In the local market. And also what they produce does not require what? Electricity. It does not depend on electrically powered equipment. So they don't need light, they don't need petrol, they don't need any sort of fuel to power their instruments they use in production. And the next thing about the local craft industry is that it is not capital intensive. So if you have any amount of money, you can easily what? Set up a local craft industry. And also one thing to note about the local craft industry is that it does not require high level of technology or education. So you don't need to get a master's degree, you don't need to go to the university, you don't need to even go to a secondary school for you to what? Engage in this industrial sector. So it basically means that anybody can pertain in this local craft industry. And also the local craft industry is unskilled labor oriented. It's unskilled labor oriented, meaning that you don't require a skill set to engage in this industry. All you simply need to do is to watch, observe and learn, and in no time you can easily do it. It can be in a day, it can be in minutes, it can be in hours, so you don't need to go to an institution to get a certification or to learn for 4 years or to get a degree before you can embark on it. So it does not require that level of skill. And also it is rural oriented, meaning that you can basically find the local craft industry in rural areas like villages and hamlets. So they are more in these places. And also the local craft industry cannot easily attract financial assistance from the government. It takes time for the government to sponsor or finance the local craft industry. So they don't receive that benefit much from the government. And the next feature of the local craft industry is that whatsoever they produce is actually based on the artistic quality of the craftsmen that we have in this industry. So the more artistic they are, the better the product that is being produced. So these are the features of the local craft industries in Nigeria. Now let's look at the problems of local craft industries in Nigeria. Now the first problem is the problem of capital. So sometimes we have situation where the local craftsmen, they are unable to get capital despite the fact that it's not huge to start up their business. And also they experience the issue of small scale production. So they don't really enjoy the economics of large scale production, because one thing about the large scale production is that there is more and more profits and benefits and recognition compared to the small scale. So that's the problem limiting the local craft industry. And the third problem is the use of obsolete technology. You see, most of these equipments or facilities that we use to engage in the local craft industry, they are obsolete and archaic. They've been existing for over 100 years. Things like the potter's wheel, the weaving machine and the rest. So these things, they are old and archaic. And the next problem of the local craft industry is the lack of access to funds from financial institutions. You see, most local craft men and women, they find it difficult to get financial assistance from the government or from other organizations. Then the next problem of local craft industry is that it is not organized, and also it is not registered among the modern life. Now that means that you see there is a low level of organization existing in the local craft industry, and also that recognition or registration is not really there for the local craft industry. And also there's always this lack of governmental support for the local craft industry. So the reason is that the government, they give so much preference to the secondary industries that we have in the country. And another problem is the problem of transportation. Then we also have lack of raw materials from the immediate localities at times, and also we have cases of low demand for the products, because most people prefer modern what products to local made what products. So these are what the problems of local craft industries in Nigeria. Now let's look at the importance of local craft industry. Now it's important because it involves a very simple technology that can easily be acquired by operators, and also it is not capital intensive. So you don't need to have 10 million naira in your account, 100 million naira in your account before you can embark on this industrial process. So that's the good side of it. And also the goods and services that is being produced or rendered is actually made available in the domestic market. And the next thing about the local craft industry is that it creates employment for many people we have in Nigeria. And also the revenue that we get from these industries can be used to what? Improve the standard of living of the people. And the thing about the local craft industry is that it's a source of revenue for government through taxation, meaning that government can as well what tax people that are into what the local craft sector. And also it provides employment, you know, for people during the agricultural what off season. So let's look at the industrial zones in Nigeria. Now the industrial zones in Nigeria are actually grouped into what? 4 categories. Now when we say industrial zones, we are talking about places in Nigeria where we have a major what? Concentration of industries, you know, in Nigeria. So those places, when you visit them, you see that they are industries where production of raw materials or processing of raw materials, you know, take place. And for the industrial zones in Nigeria, we have the North Central Industrial Zone, we have the Southwest Industrial Zone, we have the Southeast Industrial Zone, we have the Edo Delta Industrial Zone. So let's look at the industrial zones one after the other. Now we start with the first industrial zone, and the first one is the North Central Industrial Zone. Now in this zone we have states cities like Kano, Zaria, Kaduna, Jos, Gusau. You know, these places in the North Central, they have the highest concentration of industry, and what they usually produce include things like drinks, textile, food processing, car assembly, petrochemicals, oil refinery, you know, ceramics, tin smelting, and steel rolling. So these are the major things they produce in these industries. Now let's go to the Southwest Industrial Zone. Now for the Southwest Industrial Zone, we have it in places like Lagos, Ibadan, Mushin, Ikorodu, Apapa, Surulere, you know, Epe, Oshogbo, Shagam, Ereko, and the rest. You know, and what is basically produced in those industrial zones include things like food processing, electricity, soft drinks, textile, chemicals, you know, boat building, car assembly, you know, shoes and cement. So these are some of the products that are found in this industrial zone. Now the next industrial zone is the Southeast Industrial Zone. Now for the Southeast Industrial Zone, you know, we have it in states like Enugu, Onitsha, we have Port Harcourt, we have Calabar, we have Nkalago, we have Umuahia, we have Uyo, and we have Owerri, you know, and other states in the eastern part of Nigeria. Now the major industries, you know, here include the car assembly, the oil refineries, the petrochemical industries, cosmetic, power, drinks, you know, shoes, cement, machine tools, textile, you know, all of these industries, you know, are found here in the southeastern part of Nigeria, and they fall under the industrial zones in the southeast. Then for the last industrial zone, which is called the Edo Delta Industrial Zone. Now this zone includes places or industrial zones in places in Edo and also in Delta states. So we have it in Sapele, we have it in Benin, we have it in Warri, we have it in Alaja, you know, and what they usually produce is the African timber and plywood. We have steel rolling, we have soft drink, we have breweries, we have power glass, petroleum, you know, all of these, they fall under under the Edo Delta industrial zone. Now, what are the features or the characteristics of the industrial zones in Nigeria? Now, for the first feature is that we have what small size of what of factories. Most factories in the West Africa, they have what small size. And the second feature is capacity underutilization. Most of the Nigerian industries, they produce for less than the optimum capacity, meaning that they produce less than what they can carry. So they don't usually utilize their entire capacity. Now, the third one is that we have it in few towns. Industries are basically found in few towns all over the country. Places like Port Harcourt, places like Lagos State and Abuja, and Kaduna, with Sokoto, Kano and Sokoto. We have small industries found in few of these places, compared to the first world country where we have a large constitution of industries in lots of towns. And also, most things they produce, they are consumer oriented goods. So the industries in Nigeria, they are consumer industries. Now, let's look at the two categories of or classification of industry. And industry is classified into the heavy industry and the light industry. The heavy industry and the light industry. Now, for the heavy industry, there are secondary industries which are large scale in nature. So they produce goods that can be used for further production. So take note, the thing is this: the heavy industries, they produce goods which are large scale in nature. Now, let's look at the characteristics of heavy industry. Number one, they produce products on a large scale, and it's always capital intensive, and they require high money for startup. The next thing about the heavy industry is that their process of production is usually complex, and also they have a large skilled labor force. They have a complex financial and managerial organization. Their products are used for further production, and also they have a long production process, and they mainly employ males instead of females, and also they produce outside of their buildings. And also, the next thing you should know about the heavy industry is that products are capital goods for further manufacturing. So these are the characteristics of heavy industry, and the examples include the iron and steel industry, the automobile industry, the railway plants, the aircraft, the shipbuilding industry, the copper industry, the refineries, and the petrochemical industry. So all of these are examples of heavy industries we have in Nigeria. Now, a quick one, let's go to light industry. What is light industry? Now, a light industry is simply a type of secondary industry which are small scale in nature. So they produce products that are mainly consumer goods. So let's look at the examples of light industries we have. Now, but before we look at the examples, let's quickly look at the characteristics. Now, the characteristics of light industries. Now, the first characteristic is that they produce mainly light goods compared to the secondary, the heavy industry. And also, the goods they produce, they cannot be used for further production. And the next characteristics of light industry is that they are mainly found in tropical part of Africa. They employ more females than male, and also their turnover is usually small compared to the heavy industry. And they have small plants and small products. And also their production technique is usually very, very small, and they require a small capital investment before they can function. And the next thing you should note about the light industry is that they are found in urban centers and cities, and also they can be called the consumer industry. So quickly, let's go to the example, as I said. Now, the examples of light industry include things like razor blade, include things like bread, flip-flop, paper bags, toys, textile, shoes, pencil, exercise book. All of these, they fall under the light industry. Now, what are the factors to consider before citing an industry in Nigeria? Now, the thing you should consider is this: you should consider the nearness to market so that you can sell your product. Also, consider the close or proximity to raw materials, and also you should consider your nearness to power and the access to cheap labor, the availability of skilled labor, and also where there is capital, for financing the business. You also what consider that too, because if there is no capital, the business will not run. And also you should consider social infrastructures, consider things like good roads, consider things like communication, consider things like school. And the next thing is that your business or your light industry should identify with the home community to help you grow. And then the next factor of industrial location in Nigeria is that you should consider the government policies. Consider the policies of the government. When the policies are favorable, you can cite your business there, but when the policies are not favorable, you think it's best to take away your industry away that is far from that location. So these are the factors you should consider. So what are the problems of industrialization in Nigeria? Now, the first problem is the problem of capital and low income. So it makes it difficult for company owners or industry owners to raise funds. And also the low purchasing power of people in Nigeria, owing to the fact that they earn low or they are in a state of poverty, is also a major problem for industries in Nigeria. And also we have problems like competition from cheaper, high quality foreign products, and also we have problems like inadequate power supply or unreliable power supply. Then we also have problems like shortage of raw materials, problems like lack of foreign exchange, and also shortage of skilled manpower. And also it requires high cost to train or import, train members and import goods and services or ideas from a far place. And the next problem of industrialization is that there is poor transportation facilities, and it's really not good for the perishable products. And also the unreliable railway and the expensive air freight is a problem of industrialization in Nigeria. Then the next problem of industrialization in Nigeria is the over dependence on imported products. We depend so much on imported products. And also we have administrative and political problems, like bottleneck and bureaucracy, and also inconsistent policies. So these are the problems of industrialization in Nigeria. So quickly, let's go over to the exam guide we have here. Now we're going to look at 2020, and we'll look at question number 1. Now, question number 1 says outline 5 reasons for industrial localization. Now, the question is actually asking you to mention those reasons that will make an industry to be cited in a particular place. So the first reason is the climatic reason. So a good climatic reason will bring about industrial localization. And also we have things like nearness to power, we have things like nearness to raw materials, we have things like nearness to markets, and we have a good government policy. So these are the reasons for industrial localization. Now the next question says, what are the benefits of establishing manufacturing industries in rural areas? Now the first benefit you get is social amenities, and infrastructure, and also taxation by the government, is also a benefit you gain. Then you gain benefit of employment, and you also gain the benefits of revenue generation. And the next thing about the next benefit you can also get from manufacturing industries in rural area is the things like infrastructure, like roads, and water supply will be made available in the rural area, like the village or the hamlet. So these are some of the benefits that you can get from manufacturing industries in Nigeria. So with that, we have come to the end of this class. So thank you for staying with us.